Zoom lens are not the best lens for beginners, and let me tell you why. So in today's video, I basically wanted to go over and discuss my opinion, the best lens that I think you should buy if you're a beginner videographer. So the reason why I think a zoom lens should not be your first prime choice of lens is because ultimately when you use a zoom lens, it causes you to be a little bit more lazy, especially if you're a beginner videographer and you don't really know much of what you're doing. But with a prime lens, it causes you to actually get out, not be lazy, get the shots, get low, get close, get farther, it causes you to get more creative and use your mind. Now, when using a zoom lens, it also helps you to develop and understand the strength and weaknesses of your camera and of the lens itself, because you don't want to just shoot one focal length for everything. You do want to switch it up. And yes, that could take more time rather than using a zoom lens, but honestly, you'll thank yourself in the long run, for prime lenses are ultimately more sharper. So the thing with prime lenses, I think if you're a beginner, it'll help you grow in your skills a lot more quicker than a zoom lens. So a perfect example for me would be when I switched over from Canon and my Blackmagic to Sony. I didn't know much about Sony lenses at all, and I honestly didn't know what was a good lens and what was a bad lens. But one thing I did know is I did want a prime lens. So my first lens, which I don't suggest that you buy if you're a beginner, my first prime lens was the Sony 85mm f1.8. Now that lens is a fantastic lens and I highly suggest that you pick it up. But the reason why I don't recommend an 85 if you're a beginner is because that focal length is very, very tight, and if you don't really know what you're doing, you could probably get kind of frustrated when using it. But with me, I was kind of already experienced with prime lenses, so it wasn't much of an issue for me. But I did have this lens, and this is the only lens that I had for the longest, so I had to shoot absolutely everything on an 85, and that is not ideal or the best option or the best lens to shoot everything on. But me being with my skill sets that I have and me learning so much about primes and the camera that I'm using, I was able to really manipulate and maneuver and use it to the best of my ability and get amazing footage. For an example, I had shot a workout film, a workout commercial actually, with the 85mm in a tight gym that had absolutely no space. It had workout gear all over the place, but I was able to maneuver and get around things because of my knowledge and my understanding and the skill set that I have when using prime lens. I was able to make it work, and the footage honestly came out pretty good. So if you're watching this video and you're wondering, thinking, okay, well, what kind of prime lens should I get then if I shouldn't get a zoom lens? My opinion, I suggest that you either get a 35 or a 50. Now, a 50 is my go-to. I suggest you get a 50. But if you don't want to get that close, that's too close for you, and you still are kind of skeptical and kind of scared of how you're going to be able to maneuver everything if you're a beginner, then get a 35. But the reason why I say get a 50 is because a 50 is my favorite, and a 50 is what I use for majority of a lot of my stuff. Now here's a couple options if you don't really know what kind of primes to get. So for the 50mm lens, if you don't really know which options to get, here's a couple I can throw out for you. You can try the Sony Zeiss 50mm lens f1.4. That's more on the pricier side, so if you're a beginner, I don't really know if you want to spend that much money on it. It goes for around, I've seen them for as low as $800 to around $1,200, which is retail price. That's very expensive, but that's a good option. That's what I use personally. Or you can do the significantly cheaper option for $400 I've seen, is a Sony Zeiss 55mm f1.8. Now that's a lens a lot of people recommend using and that they have because it's just significantly cheaper, and they say it's really, really good. I personally haven't used it yet, and I'm really wanting to use it, and I'm gonna try it out one day if I can get my hands on it. But that's also another option. Again, that lens goes for around $400 that I've seen, so that would probably be your best route. Or, I don't recommend this lens, but I'm only telling you this because it's a budget option. You could get the Sony FE 50mm lens f1.8. Now that lens is overall just, I don't really like it. It's not a good lens in my opinion, but that option is significantly cheaper. For that lens, only going for around $200 and up, but I've seen some for low as $200. So that's probably more ideal and budget for a beginner, but those are options, and there's plenty more. There's Samyang, there's also Sigma, which makes really, really great glass. There's so many Tamron, there's so many different options. Now another good option for primes is a 35mm lens. That will be significantly wider than a 50, but not too wide like a 16 or a 24 or a 20. But a 35 is honestly probably like the second sweet spot. You can get away with a lot of 35. So I actually filmed a video inside like a doctor's office in like a patient room, and the room was super duper small, and all I had was a 35, and I just used a 35, and it came out pretty good. It was wide enough where I can still get everybody, but it wasn't too close either to where like everything was so tight and compressed. It was good. A 24 probably would have been a little bit better, but a 35, I got away with it. Now a good option for the 35 could be the 35 Zeiss f1.4. That's a good option. I seen some going for like $500. Or you can get, if you have the money, which you probably don't, you could get the G Master, but I'm not really talking about the G Master lineup in this video because if you're a beginner, that's really not ideal or budget friendly because they are so expensive, but they are an amazing piece of glass. You could try the Sony FE 35mm f1.8. I heard that's a good option. You can get Sigma 35mm f1.8 or 1.4. I think it's a 1.4. You can get the Sigma version. That's also a really good option. Sigma is honestly a very good, trustworthy brand. These are just some options that you could get and options that there's plenty more options. Sony has a lineup of different vendors that can supply you with different glass needs for all types of budget. That's the good part about Sony. Canon, you're really stuck with the RF glass. So if you're watching this and you're a Canon user, you're really stuck with the RF mounts. That's really pretty much all Canon has to offer for you right now. So you're gonna be paying a pretty penny. But if you're watching this and you have a Sony, you got endless options. Now to bring in some of my points on why I don't think zoom lenses are best for beginners, I'm not saying zoom lenses are bad, because if you're a traveler and you love to travel, then go ahead, get you a 24-70. Don't get the f4 version. I have the f4 version, the Zeiss. I don't like it. Get the f2.8. Save your money, get the f2.8. Or get you a 24-105. My first zoom lens that I ever bought for my Canon was a 24-105. And then when I went to Blackmagic, I had a Sigma 24-105. So I always use zoom lenses. I just started using primes, and when I started, I don't regret it, and I don't even want to touch a zoom lens again. But zoom lenses, they do have their pros. Like, they're not just all bad. Like, yeah, they might be less sharper than a prime. Yeah, they might be softer on some edges, but so are some primes as well. Zoom lenses for me, I don't know. I'm just making this video because I want to push you. I want you to get out and get creative. I want you to challenge yourself. I don't want you to be a lazy videographer, because when I first started, all I had was zooms and I was lazy with the shots. I didn't know, instead of just walking up closer to the subject, I would just zoom in and thinking that's a good, nice, compressed, tight shot. Now, I'm basically just making this video, just giving you my opinion on why I think the primes are better for beginners. I mean, yeah, it may seem scary at first. Yeah, it may seem hard. And everybody might tell you get a 24-70, 24-105, but if you get a prime, you will thank yourself later. I'm telling you, you'll put in the extra work, you'll put in the extra effort, you'll get more creative with your brain, get more creative with the shot ideas. You'll just have so much more fun. I have fun when I use primes. Most people get tired of switching out from 24 to 35 to 75, or they only have 75, 85 to, you know, whatever. It helps me plan out my ideas more because I know, okay, on this scene, I gotta use a 35, and then this location, I gotta switch over to a 85 for a car scene. Or if I want to do a pretty wide open shot, I'll do a 20 because I don't like 16 to 35, but I'll do like a 20. And you know, it's just stuff like that. It just helps you, it just helps the process for me, at least my process. It makes it more fun for me. So that's it for today's video. I don't want to make it too long. I don't want to make it too boring. I just want to give you my honest opinion on what I think you should buy if you're a beginner. Now, will prime lenses work for every situation? No. Do not get that misunderstood. Sometimes you will need a zoom lens. Like for instance, if you're doing like a guest speaker talking somewhere in the office, you're gonna need a zoom lens. If you do wildlife photography or videography, you're gonna need a zoom lens. If you do sports, you're gonna need a zoom lens. Stuff like that, obviously you need a zoom lens for. But if you're doing, I don't know, music videos, short films, small ads, small promo videos, Instagram reels, stuff like that, or there's actually way more stuff you can use primes for. That ain't just the limitation of it, but it's just so much stuff that you can use primes for. But zoom lenses would be better in some situations. Both lenses have their pros and cons, but for me, I'm team prime. I'm sticking with primes, and I think you as a beginner should use a prime. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. That's it for the next one. A bientôt, buongiorno.